Hi, language learner, and this is the third episode, final episode as well, where we are going to talk about grammar in general and its importance in language learning. In the previous episodes, we talked about what is it that we could do to become an outstanding language learner. And we saw that first, you had to know how to learn a language independently. Also, you need to know how to revise and review information because it's massively important for your memory and to develop. Without memory, you can't really speak another language. And third, in this episode, we're going to talk about understanding basic language. So if it's what you'd like to hear and you enjoyed this series so far, give this video a thumbs up and stick around because this is what we're going to do right now. So how does this work? Understanding processes behind grammar. So what are the key aspects about that? Why is it important? Well, actually, it is important because syntax is also the science, the linguistic science that looks like how words interact with each other. And that's kind of a very broad definition, but that's mine, okay? Other people would probably decide about something else. Grammar is very important because grammar, as I mentioned in the last video, is kind of the backbone of the language. It's how the language is organized, and each language has got a different backbone. Okay, like humans, I've got 2 legs and 2 arms, and some languages have got one way to operate. Okay, and some other languages, like other animals, have got different bodies, number of legs, and so on. So each language is kind of a different type of animal in the language world, a different system. Okay, and syntax, it looks at the system. How is the system organized? And those are very important because if you want to learn a language, you need to be able to compare how it works in your own language and how it works in another language, because that really helps you to make this information stick in your brain. And so in order to understand how language is organized and the structure of language, then you need to think about the syntactical functions. So basically, the functions of words or things are what role they're playing in sentence. And sometimes you've heard about words that modify the noun, like adjectives, and you've got also the nature of words, which sometimes is a little bit confusing. The nature of words, it depends whether it's a word that does an action or represents a thing, and so on. And again, that's a little bit of an oversimplification. I'm not a professor in linguistics. There's plenty of videos on that on YouTube. You can watch those. Because the point of today is to understand how that fits into our language learning process. So you have to understand what are the basic elements of making sentences in a language. And that's massively important because you have to understand how things work. Most languages have got verbs and adjectives. And for example, in French, we've got gender. Gender, you know, like a table in French is feminine. But then a stool is masculine. Why? We don't know. So it's like that. So you've got to learn those things. And yes, in English, you don't have to learn the gender of a table, of a chair, or a stool. But in French, you do. Because if you get it wrong, then people will not necessarily understand you, or you could land yourself in murky waters. So it's important for you to understand what are the key things to watch out for, particularly gender in French. You also need to be thinking about how things are organized. And for example, you know that in most sentences, you've got a verb for be, and it's doing the action. The action is done to the bone of being eaten. And that's the is a determiner and bone is a noun, which also this section we call a noun phrase. And being able to decompose the sentences in that way is going to really help you down, particularly in French as well, later on, because object pronouns, for example, are quite complex, and they refer to the object of the sentence, which is the function. Then we've got the dog. The dog is also a noun phrase because the key word is a noun, but it's got a secondary word, the, in front of it that plays the role of determining the dog. Is it a dog we know? Is it a dog we haven't talked about before? And then we've got the verb phrase, and then you've got your sentence altogether. So you've got your sentence with a noun phrase and a verb phrase. The verb phrase, you've got the verb, and then you've got a noun phrase that helps the verb phrase. So you can see that being able to decompose this really sometimes helps to understand how your own language works. And of course, you don't need to know that to speak a language, but sometimes it does help. So grammar in that respect is very important. And I would suggest that one thing that you could do is to think about how you could be using those skills in order to think about how does that affect your language learning. So on my website that you can visit in the links below, I would suggest that you have a quick tour. I've put together a series of videos and things that are currently not loading on the screen. Here we go. That can really help you to think about your tenses, for example, in French. They play a rather big part, and also other things, such as a complete list of grammar exercises that you can review. I do not own those websites. They are just links. Again, it's a free resources. You can use any of those things. Some of them you may feel like the first links are dedicated to a younger audience, but there are also things that get pretty advanced, which I would advise if you study for the International Baccalaureate or A-levels, or if you're just a very keen language learner. Even if you go to university, this might be useful. So have a look at this, and those are kind of the important aspects. This video is a little bit shorter because grammar, we could have 15 or 25 episodes, 30 or maybe 1,000 episodes about French grammar that would not get us just make a dent into the French grammar. So, or grammar in general in languages. So it's up to you, and it depends on the language you're learning. So therefore, I'm not going to go on too much about this, because this one is particularly about French. So if you're interested about this, visit that. If you would like to have some general language learning advice, or there's something that you would really like to know, or some things that you found interesting in the past, then feel free to actually leave a comment below. And if you thought that this video was useful, then please thumbs up and share it with your friends or your fellow language learners. Tell us what you need, and then we can take it from there. So that concludes this series in 3 points and 3 episodes that hopefully you've enjoyed watching. So let me know if you've enjoyed watching them as well in the comment below. Thank you very much for listening, and I shall see you soon. Bye.